chapter 4, which is all about transformations. Transformations are simply ways that we move a figure around a graph. We're going to start off with this one called translations. Now, translation is simply a transformation that shifts a figure up, down, left, or right. We start off with the pre-image. So a pre-image is what you start with, the original. Okay? It is the one that you have, the figure that you have before it is moved. An image is your finish figure after it is moved. Now, our image and our pre-image have different markings. Our pre-image, for example, we would use point A. Point A, after it has the transformation done to it, becomes A prime. So the prime mark, this tick mark right here, this denotes that it is the image, not the pre-image. Now, we're also going to be using these things called vectors to move things. A vector is simply a quantity that represents how a figure is moved in a coordinate plane. So what it's telling you is, how do we move this? Are we moving it to the right? Are we moving it to the left, up, or down? All right, we have a couple different ways of writing this. The first one is what we call the component form. Okay, the component form tells us two things. It starts off and it uses these pointed parentheses. And then what you have here is it will tell you your horizontal movement, which in fact will impact the x value. And then it will come back and it will tell you your vertical movement, which will impact the y value. Okay, so when we look here, it says using 10, -4, the component 10, -4, find the image. So remember, the 10 is impacting the x, the -4 is impacting the y. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 10 and we simply add it to the 3. So what that ends up giving us is A prime now is located at -3 plus 10 would be 7. And then 5 minus 4 would be 1. And that is where our new image is. Let's try another one here. B. So B prime is going to be located at, we take the x value 10, add it to the -10, and that would be at 0. We take the y value -4, add it to the -1, and that would be at -5. Okay, so that's how we go from a pre-image to an image after we apply the component. Okay, next we're going to use it to go backwards this time. Now, if you think about that, going backwards means that if it has a -8, that means we started off with this pre-image, we subtracted 8, and we ended up at 2. So what that means then is to go backwards to the image, we have to go backwards with the math. So therefore, if I minus 8, now to get from the image to the pre-image, we're going to have to add 8 to that. So that means we would be at 10. Instead of adding 1, we would have to subtract 1 because we're working backwards. So that would put us at 10, 1. Okay, let's try another one here. So the pre-image D is going to be located at, so once again, I'm going backwards. I have the image, I'm going to the pre-image. So instead of minusing 8, I'm going to add 8 to it, which will put me at 14. And then to get the pre-image for the y, instead of adding 1, I'm going to subtract 1, which will put me at -8. Okay, so that's how we use the component form to find those. Another way that we can do this is by writing a rule. Now, personally, I think the rule is even a little more obvious than the component part. So the rule here, what it will do is it will tell you where you're starting. So for example, here we are starting at X and Y. And then what it will do is it will tell me how am I impacting X. So it'll say X plus or minus a number. And then it will come back and say how I'm impacting Y plus or minus a number. Okay, so, and then literally you just do that math to it. So if we start here on the first one, I'm starting at the pre-image. So the image I'm going to take the -3 and I'm going to subtract 1, right? That's what that's saying there, is take the pre-image and subtract 1 from it. So -3 minus 1 is going to give me -4. Then I come back. Now I do the pre-image to the Y. I do the translation to it, which is going to be take the Y value and -3. So therefore, I'm going to come down here. 5 minus 3, that's going to get me at 2. So I have -4, 2. Okay, let's try the second one here. So I look here, I'm going to go to the image, so B prime. Once again, we start off. We're going to go -10 minus 1. That's going to get me -11. Then I'm going to go -1 minus 3. That's going to get me at -4. So that's how we go backwards on that. So we're starting at the pre-image, going to the image after the translation is done. Now, we can also go the other way. So notice here, I am given the image, and I know that because I have the tick marks here, and they're telling me now to find the pre-image. So I'm looking for C. So just like before, you have to think back. If the pre-image was a number and I added 5 to it, I ended at the value of 2. So now to go the other way, we have to subtract. So I'm going to take this, and instead of adding 5, I'm going to minus 5, which would put me at -3. Instead of adding 6 to the Y, I'm going to minus 6, and that would put me at -4. Okay, likewise over here, I can find D, and just like before, instead of adding 5 to the 6, I'm going to minus 5, which would put me at 1. And instead of adding 6, I'm going to minus 6, which would put me at -13. So that's how we move back and forth based off of either component form or the rule telling me the horizontal and the vertical movement, translation. We're sliding that image around. All right, so let's try it now on a graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to find both the pre-image and the image after we have a translation of -5, 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off graphing the pre-image. So 0, 3, make sure you're marking your vertices. So A is at 0, 3, B is at 2, 4, and C is at 1, 0. And I'm just going to connect those real quick. Okay, so there is my pre-image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those now and I'm going to translate them. So here, A prime is going to be located saying I'm going to go 5 to the left and I'm going to go 1 up. So 0 minus 5 gets me -5. 3 plus 1 gets me a 4. So A prime is going to go 5 to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 1. And you'll notice if I just track it that way, it also works. -5 up 4. Okay, now let's try B prime. So B prime is at 2, 4. So 2 minus 5 puts me at -3. 4 plus 1 gets me at 5. So -3, 5. And that is going to be B prime. And then the last one, C prime, 1 minus 5 would get me -4. 0 plus 1, that's at 1. So here is my new image after I translated -5, 1. And what you're basically doing, the image has to stay congruent. It has to stay the exact same. So you're taking that entire image, each of the vertices, and you're moving them 5 to the left, up 1. Okay? So that's how we do that using the component form. Now let's try it with the rules. So we're going to start off graphing the pre-image. So -4, -4. Here is A, -1, -3. Here's B, -2, -2. Here's C. Okay, so here's our pre-image. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this now and we're going to convert it to our image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off and I'm going to say, okay, A prime says, hey, take your x value, add 6 to it. So that would put us at 2 for x. -4 plus 2 is at -2. So 2, -2 would be A prime. B prime, -1 plus 6 puts me at a 5. And then -3 plus 2 puts me at a -1. So 5, -1. That's going to put us at B. And then the last one, C prime. I'm going to go -2 plus 6, that's at 4. I'm going to go -2 plus 2, that's at 0. So 4 is 0. You'll notice that the shape is identical. They're congruent. They're the exact same shape, exact same size. All we're doing is sliding it around. Okay? So that's how we go through that. All right. On this last one, we're going to give you two pictures. We're going to give you two figures on a graph, and we're going to ask you to write the rule both in words, component form, and the rule itself. So how do we know which one's which? The key here is you have to look for the tick marks. So the red is the image, the blue is the pre-image. So what you're going to do here is just take 1 point, okay? So I'm going to focus in on C's. And I'm just simply going to ask what moves me from C to C prime. So I'm going from the pre-image to the image. So if I think of this from C to C prime, I would have to go 1, 2, 3 to the right and 1 down. So in words, that's how we describe it. We're going to move 3 to the right, down 1. Component form now, 3's a positive, down 1's a negative, so it's going to look like that. To write our rule, we're going to start off with x comma y. We're going to translate it to x plus 3, y minus 1. Okay? Same thing here on the second one. We start off, I'm going to go from A to A prime. So this one, I would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, and up 1. So now when we write it into the component form, left is a negative movement, up is a positive. And in the rule, I'm going to start off with xy, and it is going to go x minus 4 and y plus 1. Okay, and that is translation, sliding a figure around a graph.